All right, how's it going all? So, someone on my Discord asked if I could kind of explain my journey into getting into software engineering and how I like kind of got to the places I am today. And I want to kind of share with you, that path. And hopefully you guys learn something from it. Hopefully I can kind of teach you something from it. So, going back to when I first started to code, I think this was about in middle school, okay? So, in middle school, there was a game I used to play a lot and I had like my own guild, I guess you can call, where you had like people on a Ventrilo server talking every night, playing a game together. This game was called Zombie Panic. So this is like a Half-Life game. I don't know if you played Half-Life. I'm assuming hopefully you've heard of Half-Life 1, but there's a big community around adding mods to Half-Life, and Zombie Panic was one of those mods. And I ran my own server basically where people could join, after they get off work or after they get off school and they could all play together. But one of the things I kind of got into that kind of led me into programming was scripting. So on your server, I don't remember what the names of these mods were. There's like a AMPQ mod or something, Half-Life mod. So I don't remember what it was. I think it's AMX mod X. There's like this modding tool you can use to basically write scripts for your server. And one of the things I was trying to do was like I wanted to write a script that allowed users to get custom skins. So when you join the game, like there's a typical skin that you had if you're a human. And if you're a zombie, there was like another skin. So there's like 2-player skins that you could use. And I wanted to figure out a way to like give special players, like people who are in my guild, their own custom skin. Like so there's like I kind of like looked into this and like figured out how to hack at this programming language. I believe the language is called like pawn language. By the way, I don't really know where I'm going with this talk. I'm just kind of going to be jumping around. But there's like this language that we used or that I used to script this stuff on the server so that my players could get custom skins. And I honestly, I had no idea what I was doing. I was like trying to recode. I had no idea what was going on. I think it was like a lower level C type of language. So it's like super confusing, especially for a beginner who doesn't know how to code at all. But after a lot of weeks of just hacking at it and trying to copy and paste examples I found online, I managed to get a script plugin working, and I could actually charge people money for having their skins on the server. So that's like kind of like the first things I can kind of remember about how I got into programming. I was big into gaming, and that kind of led me down the path of learning how to program. And again, this was like back in middle school, so I was like 14, 15 or something. I don't remember the ages. But then when I got into high school, there was a introduction to programming class, and also there were some web development classes. So I think when I was like a freshman or a sophomore in high school, I joined a web development class where they taught how to structure like an HTML page, how to apply some styling with it, how to use tables to kind of lay out your page and stuff like that. Nothing too extreme. And honestly, stuff that you learned in middle school and high school, like, do you actually truly grasp what the heck you're doing? I don't think I actually did, but I guess it kind of helped me later on. So we learned how to build like really basic web pages and like how to become like a web admin or a website master, I guess they call it. And so that was like the first class that I took in high school. But then after you take that class, you can kind of level up to higher classes like Introduction to Java Programming, Object-Oriented Programming. So in high school, when I was like a junior and senior, I took some AP courses related to programming, and we kind of learned what Java was, how to build Java applications, how to do object-oriented programming, how all that stuff works, inheritance. And we, at the end of the school year, we take basically a college level test to see if we can get college credit for that test. So I don't know what it's called, like Comp Sci A and Comp Sci AB or something. So I took those, I passed those classes, and those really helped me understand like how to actually program, how object-oriented programming works, and kind of got my feet wet with Java. So again, I was like, I was 16, 17, 18 when I was like doing that stuff. And then of course, I would kind of look on the side, like how to do a little bit of PHP development. I think one thing I tried to do all the time was like build games. So I remember during that time period of like junior and senior of high school, I think at one point I looked into like XNA, which is like a Microsoft game studio thing. I don't remember when that came out, but I remember looking into this and trying to build a game with this. I also remember trying to build a game with Java applets. And I actually, in high school, I managed to get a client server applet running. So people can go to a web page and load this Java applet. And we had a bunch of players in my comp sci class basically connecting to a server, sending over like, I think it was like TCP sockets. But basically I like looked into more like game programming. How do you actually make a server which is controlling all the logic, and you have all these clients connecting to it? And I had like players moving around. So like we had all these people in the class like hitting WASD, moving a character around on the actual like board, and we were able to play with each other. So I built that in high school, and that was really fun. It was super hard to do. At the time, I had no idea what I was doing, honestly. I feel like I never knew what I was doing until I reached like a certain point in my career, and then stuff just started clicking. But that was all in high school and middle school. And then I went into college. I already knew what major I wanted to do. I wanted to do computer science. So I kind of went into college, declared my major of computer science, and started taking some introductory classes in computer science. I don't remember what they actually make you take in computer science, but I remember some of the classes were like, we had to learn how to use C, which really helps you understand like the lower level data structures of like how do strings work, how do pointers work, how does memory work. I remember like learning about malloc and alloc and all this other stuff. I had no idea like what a lot of that stuff does. And I'm glad I don't do C or C++ programming today, because that stuff is really hard to understand in my opinion. And then they taught about like linkers and header files and all this other stuff. So I remember taking courses in that. And then also there were more like Java courses I had to take, where again, they went over object-oriented programming, kind of taught all that stuff. And as you progress through college, they throw harder courses at you. So I think, remember, one of the courses we had to learn was like how to build a compiler. So they taught us how to build like a recursive descent parser, and we can actually build our own language that actually like could do some stuff. So that was pretty cool. I don't really remember much of that, but I remember there was a course on assembly. So they taught us about assembly, how that all works, how like assembly instructions work, how do you write them. And we actually had to like write assembly code to do some type of program, which was actually pretty interesting to learn how assembly works. Let's see if I can look at some instructions. So like when you're doing assembly, there's like little instructions like add and sub and all this other stuff, where you basically tell like the computer how to do the lower level stuff and how to like change data. And you have like something called like registers and stuff. It's crazy. It's cool to learn. Is it really useful in the long term of like your career? Not really. But it is interesting to know that like when we're using Java and JavaScript and C++, it's basically calling stuff like this under the hood, right? We've abstracted all that away from us, so it's a lot easier to build programs. But at the lower level, like there's an assembly language that's actually running these commands. And it's just interesting to know how this stuff works, honestly. So what else? There's a lot of other courses I did in computer science. I don't really remember like a lot of them, like the gist of them. I think I've kind of forgotten by now. But also during that time, like during my college years, I started looking into PHP. I wanted to learn how to do like web programming, how to build a database, and how to like store stuff on the database and stuff like that. So I looked into PHP scripting, and that was pretty fun. Like I learned how to like create records and store them on the database, and how to use the PHP templates to kind of render out pages to the front end. And that was all using traditional server-side rendering. So you do like post back requests to have the page process your data and then show you a new type of template. Honestly, I would recommend that try to learn a traditional like server-side rendering language, so you kind of understand like where we came from. I think this day and age, a lot of people just jump straight into React and like single page applications, and they don't really understand like, 10 years ago, we were coming from a completely different mindset of how applications work, right? We're using like Ruby on Rails to build these server-side rendered applications. And over the years, like we've slowly transitioned to single page applications, having things use a lot of JavaScript to build up websites. So I think it's good to go back in time and kind of understand like where we came from, because honestly, there's a ton of sites out there that still do server-side rendering. They still do this approach, right? They have like a template, and that template like fetches data from the backend using like a model view controller approach. And then that view gets rendered in HTML to the user. The user might have a form and submit some data that does like a post back or a post request to another page. That page processes the data and then redirects the user. So it's kind of more complicated, but in a sense, it's like more simplistic than what we're doing these days with like bundlers and all these other libraries we have to do just to build out a web page. But at that time, like I was definitely looking into PHP and like how could I build an application. And one thing I actually started building was an application for kind of rock climbing gyms to manage their routes. So if you don't know much about rock climbing, like you go to a gym and there's something called route setters. There's employees called route setters that basically set these routes. And typically they have a route that's all the same color. And I was working on an application with a buddy of mine who's a designer to build out an actual application where users could go and kind of vote on routes and like upvote routes, comment on routes, and route setters can go and kind of mark routes and like rate the difficulty of the route. So it's a way to like have the users of your gym, the members of your gym, be able to document the routes and like get their progress over time. Because, you know, as you keep going to the rock climbing gym, you start getting better, you start sending harder routes. And I wanted a way to kind of like allow people to track that, right? So there's already software out there that kind of does that. But that was kind of like my first steps of building something cool in PHP. I actually built that out. I learned about the backend, MySQL, storing all those records. And then somewhere along the line, like I got into AngularJS. It's all kind of blurry at this point, but let me take a step back. So before I got into AngularJS, and I did all my computer science degree stuff, and I kind of graduated and got my degree, I had a job lined up because I did a computer vision research undergrad position at my college, where basically I learned a lot about computer vision. Let me go ahead and type in computer vision. So computer vision is basically the discipline of getting a computer to recognize things and images, right? You can do object detection, you can do facial recognition, you can do, I don't know, there's a lot of computer vision with self-driving cars, I believe. You can use computer vision when you're doing like a conveyor belt or some type of manufacturing where they need to inspect fruits to see if fruits are bad and they kick those off the conveyor belt. So I learned a lot about that. And through that position, the undergraduate research position that happened only over a summer, there was a company who came in and kind of like saw us give demos. And at the end of that, at the end of my career in college, I went ahead and applied to that company who I, you know, kind of had an in with, and I got a job at that company. It was just it was kind of like an entry level job. I think I was getting like $60,000 a year on that job, and it was a lot of Java programming. But I'll tell you what, that job, I learned a ton about software engineering. Like the first 6 months of that job, I probably learned more than I ever have in college or in high school and all these other things. Like when you actually get a full-time job, the amount of knowledge that is just thrown at you and the amount of stuff that you have to learn it's crazy. But I was doing a lot of Java programming, and it was more like enterprise Java. So I think I was doing like Java EE with like beans. But basically I had to like build this. I was on an IRAD, an internal research and development team, where we had to kind of like reinvent an existing huge system with like cheaper off the shelf open source technologies. So we had to look into like using Elasticsearch, Kibana for like logs, Elasticsearch for doing like searches over our databases. And we had to figure out how to like process all this different type of satellite data and run it through these algorithms that were given to us. It was crazy. There's a lot of stuff that we learned, or that I learned on that project. I think I was there for like a year or so. Like there's something called like a message broker I learned about, where you have like this centralized service that kind of takes and receives messages or publishes and subscribes to messages. I guess I kind of said that wrong. It's your services will subscribe to the message broker, and other services will publish messages on that message broker. I think we're using ActiveMQ. So this is like a Java, the thing that you use for Java for basically sending messages, and your different services on the back end can kind of communicate with each other. So I learned a lot about that. And then at some point we switched over to RabbitMQ. Again, our job on the IRAD was just to research different technologies and kind of understand how they worked and if they are a good solution, and kind of just stress test them and see like how well do these things work if we were to use them on a production system. I think I was also using something called SVN, which is Subversion. So we weren't using Git on that team. We were using Subversion. I don't even remember how this stuff worked. I just know it was kind of complicated. Git's complicated as well, so don't get me wrong there. But this is the version control I had to learn. It's just a lot of stuff. So that was like my first job. And I remember when I first got there, like it's pretty intimidating, especially when you're on a project where there's not like a lot of people kind of giving you guidance as to what you build. Like I was on a team with a bunch of new grads who were just, you know, tinkering with the system, and there wasn't that great of leadership. So I don't think I really learned as much as I could have if we had like more leadership on that team. but still I got exposed to a lot of ideas, like the whole agile process. I think we did Scrum, and we did like 2-week sprints. We had stand-ups, we had backlog refinements. We did like story pointing. We did story pointing and stuff like that. So I basically got a good overview of like how is a software system built, how is the business side of things set up, how is the development lifecycle set up for building out these systems. But I'll be honest, during that time I got really bored. Like I didn't want to do Java development. I wanted to go back to my roots, which was like PHP web development. How do you build like websites? How do you host these websites and stuff like that? So at some point I got pretty burned out, and I'm like, I just need to kind of quit. There's some other reasons too why I quit, but basically I needed a change. So I just quit my job, and then I went back home and lived with my dad. And I think for a couple months, I literally just full time just looked into learning Angular JS. I really wanted to become a web developer. So I read into like, how do you build a Node API using Express and all this other stuff. I looked into Angular JS, and I kind of went back to the drawing board of that climbing application I talked about. Route setting management software. That's kind of like the niche that I was working on. But I went back to that application, and I decided to rewrite everything with Node and Angular JS. I just worked full time, like 8, maybe even 10 or 12 hours every day. I treated it like a full-time job. I wasn't making money. I was just learning. I wanted to build something, and I wanted to actually try to finish this. So that's kind of how I got my feet wet into web development. Don't get me wrong, on the actual job I was at beforehand, before I quit, we were building a UI. We had like a UI built, and we had, some REST APIs set up. But I wanted to actually like say that I'm working on like Angular JS. It was really big at the time. So Angular JS, like when this came out, I think it was like 2014 or 2013, or at least that's when I started looking into it. And I just knew that a lot of people were using it, and I just wanted to learn it for myself. So I just read the docs, I started reading it. And you got to remember, during this time, I didn't have a job. I wasn't working. I was just living at home with my dad, trying to save money, basically sleeping on the floor. And I got a call from my brother's friend, who was like a consultant who ran like a small company where he outsourced consultants to other companies. And he called me up. He's like, hey, I got a job position for you. I want to see if you're kind of interested. I'm like, yeah, I guess I could be interested. I want to do web development. And he's like, okay, well, I got an Angular JS project I think you might be interested in. And he asked me some questions. The first question he asked me is, could you explain to me what a promise is? And I could not really answer that question. And this was like on the phone, and it's kind of a casual conversation. And after I kind of gave my half-assed answer, he basically is like, yo, look, dude, I don't think you're ready. I don't think you're confident enough in what you're doing. I think you need to spend more time learning about what a promise is, what front-end engineering is, what Angular JS is. And honestly, that's when like I put the pedal to the metal and just like doubled down on like my learning. And I think he called me back like a month later, and he's like, hey, I want to see if you can interview for this position that I called you back about like a month ago. And I'm like, yeah, sure. And then I got set up with the interview. And this was like at the current company that I'm at now. So I got set up with an interview, and I started interviewing at that company. Honestly, that interview was pretty casual. Like I think they just needed a head count on the project, and they hired me on. I got brought in like 2014. It was like 7 or plus years ago. But I remember when I first started that job, I had no idea what I was doing, right? I kind of switched career paths into web development. I was put on a team with a ton of senior developers. Like I was probably the youngest one on the project, to be honest. And I had the least amount of experience. So I feel like I had to really put the pedal to the metal and like learn what the heck I was doing. And for the first like 6 months to a year, like I feel like I was just struggling. It was really hard to keep up with these other developers, but luckily we did pair programming and mob programming at this company. So every day I was actually working alongside of more senior engineers, and they were kind of, showing me how to do things and showing me some tips and tricks along the way. So I think it really brought me up to speed with web development. At the time, I think we were using something called CoffeeScript. So CoffeeScript is a tool that is basically dead now, but you can basically write really, really concise JavaScript where you don't have any curly braces, you don't have any like special semicolons or anything like that. So if you notice on the left, this is CoffeeScript. It's probably hard to see. And on the right, this is JavaScript. You notice how much more concise the code is. And honestly, the arrow function kind of started with CoffeeScript. So you notice here in JavaScript, we have like the fat arrow. That all started with CoffeeScript, I believe. So I was put on a project with that, and we're using like Jade or Pug at the time, and then we're using like some type of stylus, which is like CSS with no curly braces. So it's like a ton of stuff I had to learn. We weren't even using AngularJS at the time. We were using something called Backbone JS. So this is like an MVC framework you can use for the front end. Honestly, the whole time I was using it, I don't think I really understand what the heck was going on. And even now, when I read through the docs, I still can't really grasp what the heck Backbone JS is doing. Um, I don't know. There's sometimes I read through code and I'm just like, I just don't. It doesn't make sense to me. And this is like one of those languages. But the whole project was done in Backbone and those things I kind of mentioned. And it was kind of like it was a fun project, but at the same time it was a struggle because I got brought on to like a project that's been going on for a year, and the code base was pretty big. It had a lot of different components. It had a ton of different testing on it. It had just a ton of stuff. And honestly, I was just like, I was lucky if I could fix like a single bug in a week. I remember spending like 2 weeks trying to fix a single bug. And at some point I'm like, dude, I can't fix this bug. And what made it worse is when I first got hired for that job, they also hired 2 other people at the same time. So there's 3 people who are working. And then after about 2 weeks, they fired 2 of them. So like I was the last guy standing from that initial hire of 3. And I was just freaking out the whole time. But I guess I, passed the test. I think they got fired due to other reasons. I think I think the project just kind of ran out of money. Unfortunately, at the wrong time, they hired people like right before resources got cut, so they had to let some people go. But anyway, so that's kind of like where I got like my first legit web development position. I was doing a contracting position for this company. And after I was on this Backbone JS, I was asked, do I want to move on to another project inside this company to work on an Angular JS project? So I kind of said yes. So I definitely jumped on that offer, and we were switched over to another project where we built a front end with Angular JS, then kind of connected to some legacy API services. And that's when I got my first real exposure to like writing a production ready Angular JS UI. And all throughout that time, I'm going to kind of summarize a lot of stuff because I kind of got switched from project to project to project. Throughout that time period, Angular 2 came out, and then TypeScript was really big. So I kind of switched over and started using TypeScript with Angular 2. And then I got switched over to another project, which was Greenfield. So from the ground up, we started working on it, and that was in React. And we used something called Cerebral JS on this project. So it's just crazy. Like depending on where you're working, like you'll either get put on a project that's kind of boring, or you'll get switched over from project to project and like be able to do some cool stuff. I don't really know where I'm going with this talk. I just wanted to give like a little overview of like how I went from, middle school learning how to write scripts for a game all the way to where I am now of like, obviously like I know a lot about programming. Oh, there's some stuff I forgot to mention. On the last projects I was on, like before I even got to this project where we're using Cerebral, there was a lot of stuff had to learn related to Puppeteer, or not Puppeteer. What is it called? It's called Puppet? I think it's called Puppet. Yeah, here it is, Puppet. So on those previous projects, remember I'm saying projects, not company. I've been at the same company now for like 7 years, but we have the opportunity to kind of switch projects if we get bored and stuff. But one of the things that I kind of started learning more in was like the DevOps side of things. I looked a lot into Jenkins, how to configure Jenkins jobs, how to set up workflows and pipelines. And at this company that we were kind of consulting for, they had this entire Puppet system set up, where Puppet is a way to kind of provision servers wherever you want, right? So like you'll spin up a server, you install a Puppet agent on it, and you have like a Puppet main or Puppet master that kind of configures all these servers and sets them up the way they need to be. So that's something that I kind of looked into a lot, is like, how do I configure these different node applications that we had to have running? It was really hard, to be honest. Like jumping into DevOps was really, really difficult. We managed to hack stuff together. I remember one time we had to look into how to use something called Console, which is basically a service discovery tool where you have all these microservices basically needing to figure out where these other microservices live. So I had to pair with one person to kind of use this Console application so that our microservices could talk to each other, basically. And again, this is like all before Docker was really big. We weren't really using Docker at the time. Yeah, I'll just say that I did a lot of DevOps stuff. I was full-time doing like full stack engineering. and mainly front end, back end. But at some point, I switched over to also doing a lot of the DevOps work when I got put onto a project because I had a lot of knowledge with Puppet, Console, AWS stuff. I was starting to learn more about Amazon Web Services, right? So there's a ton of Amazon Web Services that I kind of know and I've used over the years. I don't know, EC2, CloudWatch, S3, Lambda, SQS, SNS. I could probably name a couple of more, but just, we keep on using these different Amazon services to solve different types of problems. And I was kind of one of the people who had to try to figure out how to do this. One of the things we had to do as well was serverless. So there's like a serverless framework that we had to use to kind of spin up all of these backend Amazon resources. This is a cool framework you can use if you wanted to build out a serverless API. I don't know if it's still good these days. I haven't really used it in a while, but yeah, to be honest, like my career has been like all over the place, and that's why I consider myself a full stack engineer, because I've done front end work with AngularJS, Backbone, React professionally, and then like on the back end, I've done Node stuff, I've done Java stuff, I've done REST APIs, I've done a lot of DevOps, I've done serverless computing, you name it. Like there's still so much more that I need to learn. But it's just fun to know all these different stuffs, all these different things. I wouldn't say I'm like an expert at a lot of this stuff. I'm more of like a, jack of all trades generalist, but I just learn enough to get the job done. If I need something deployed and we have to use Puppet, I'll read through the docs, just try to figure out how to get this working, and I'll get it deployed. But that's kind of like where I've been at. That's kind of like before this current project I'm on. I'm currently on a project that's using Cerebral.js with React. On the back end, we're using a ton of Amazon resources, and we're using Node and Express and wrapping all that in an Express Lambda wrapper so we can get like an Express application running on Amazon. It's crazy. This project I'm on is pretty big, and I've learned a ton of things since being on this project. I've seen a lot of people come and go. Like, I think since the start of the project, we had like 10 developers who were on the project. And I've been on this project for like 3+ years now, and everyone has left except for me. I'm like the last man standing on this project, which is kind of depressing, to be honest. Everyone else has left to go find other jobs. To be honest, I don't know if they're happy with the new jobs that they've gotten. I think some of them have switched 2 jobs since they left this project. So the grass isn't always greener. Like if you're not happy at a company, sometimes if you leave, you're not going to find a better position or a better setup for you. So just keep that in mind. If you're really happy with where you're at and you're learning a lot where you're at, definitely stick around with whatever company that you're at. So yeah, I mean, this talk was kind of random and just all over the place. I didn't really have anything planned out, but if you have any questions about like any of those different segments of my career transitions or my career progress, I don't know what the word is I'm trying to say, but if you have any questions, you want me to kind of dive deeper into like a certain segment of like my learning, like maybe when I first got into the industry, or maybe when I first started learning Java in high school or something, or when I first got into AngularJS development, I could try to make a video on that stuff if it's interesting to you all. But yeah, I'll probably just wrap up this talk. For the person who asked this question on Discord, if I missed any key points, just let me know. I'll make another video. But I wanted to give like a quick, not a quick overview, but I wanted to give an overview of like how I got to the places I am today. But if you imagine, I've been working like 7, 8, 9 years full time now. So 9 years full time, that's 40 hours a week, 52 weeks in a year. That's a lot of hours spent programming. And at this point, I don't even remember. A lot of the times, like I don't remember what I did 2 days ago. So there's a lot of stuff that happens when you're working full time, and when you've been in the industry for a while, everything just starts blurring together. Anyway, have a good day and happy coding. I hope this talk was kind of beneficial for anyone who was listening.